About a week ago, I randomly decided to binge watch the first season of Rings of Power, and I didn't hate it, so I was actually surprised that yesterday was going to be season 2 premiere, and I decided to watch it because, like I said, I didn't hate it. Now, that being said, I do have a disclaimer. So the disclaimer is I am a casual fan of The Lord of the Rings, and thus I do not possess enough knowledge of the lore to detect a counterfeit. It is also worth noting that I do not count adaptations as canon. I count adaptations as fan fiction. This is how I can enjoy shows as they are presented and not for their potential. So we opened season 2 with the episode Elven Kings Under the Sky. Now right off the bat, we open with Fedorwaith, I think it's called, and the cinematography there is pretty cool. If someone's gonna like nitpick that the show looks cheap or something, like, I don't know. I don't know enough about cinematography to tell you what looks cheap and what doesn't look cheap, but as a casual fan, this definitely passes the mustard. I don't see anything wrong with it. I do like wintry scapes and like fallish landscapes. I don't like hot weather because it makes me feel hot. I'm from Louisiana, so I try to I don't like watching that. So the desert stuff is something that I'm not gonna find as appealing, but that's just based on my personal preference. I'm also not gonna be talking about the Harfoots that much in my reviews, just because I don't find them very interesting, and I know there's like other reviewers that's gonna talk about the Harfoots and their journey a lot, so I don't think it'll be missed in my reviews. So we do open the story with Sauron's backstory and kind of like his past and how he came to be and the fact that he changes forms. And I've got to say that I'm pretty interested because that is something we didn't get with the Peter Jackson movies, and I'm not sure if we even get that in the Lord of the Rings trilogy because I haven't read it. But there's more than the trilogy, so maybe it's in one of the other books. But yeah, we didn't really get that backstory, so seeing it now is like really interesting. It's also interesting to see him being sort of this master chess player and kind of manipulating things with what he says rather than like what he does, or even like some of it what he doesn't say. So in season 1 we do witness like Galadriel kind of projecting onto him what she wants to see, and he just kind of going along with it, but it works out in his favor. Or maybe he knows just what to say or what not to say in order to get people to project onto him. In any case, I prefer political intrigue over outright fighting, so I am biased in that regard. So this is very interesting to me. Like, I just a few weeks ago finished watching Succession, and I used to watch Game of Thrones for a few seasons, and the Peter Dinklage character was my favorite. Just because while I like stunts, like in the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson trilogy, I like seeing like Legolas fighting and everything because I do like stunts. Like, I found it kind of tedious to watch the armies fighting. Like, it just went on and on and on, and fast forwarding it. So yeah, I do prefer the intrigue side of things. So initially we see that Sauron is actually rejected by the orcs, and that's cool to see because now we don't think that things are easy for Sauron to accomplish. So he's not going to be like a Mary Sue character at all. He has to really work for his place in the world, and actually if you do any type of research, like, he's constantly being defeated and having to reform himself, which is the second cool thing about seeing him get rejected, is we do see him kind of being defeated in this moment and having to shapeshift into something else and kind of taking on a lesser form until he could reform into something more palatable for mankind. which establishes him as a shapeshifter. I do question why he takes on a venom-like sludge rather than shadow or a cloud, which he's kind of described as when I was doing my research. It could be that he was described also as a sludge, but I didn't come across that during my research. So yeah, I'm just wondering why it wasn't like a cloud or a shadow or like smoke or something. We do get to see how Halbrand at that time. Halbrand is if you don't know, he's Sauron and he's also Anatar. So if you're like me and you don't know much about the lore, these three people are the same person. So we do see how Halbrand comes to possess that pouch that with that royal crest on it in season 1, and he does get it from a dying man. I wouldn't say the guy was dead, but he definitely didn't live. So we get to see how he comes by that, and that's actually very interesting because it's like shapeshifter inception in a way, because Sauron has shapeshifted into a human called Halbrand, but the pouch gives him another identity, like an unofficial shapeshift. And so actually in season 1 we do see Galadriel latching onto this additional layer of identity. Speaking of Galadriel, I still don't like her. I didn't like her in season 1 just because she was immature and arrogant, and this first episode of season 2 is not showing a change in her, and she's still not having an arc, and it doesn't look like she's gonna get an arc. And Halbrand, or Sauron, he is in full arc mode. He's making changes. You can see his descent. Of course, we know that he's not going to get over his evilness and become good again, but he's going to descend into pure evil. But it's still a change, and that is interesting. Now getting back to Galadriel, despite being proven to be so incompetent in season 1, she's still kind of like sticking to her guns on this one. In season 1, she was talking so much trash about what she was going to do to Sauron, and only to be the one who kind of ushers him in a sense. And then in this episode, it seems like she's refusing to take accountability for her incompetence. She even tries to compare her failure here to Elrond's failure in Khazad-dûm, which I don't even consider what happened in Khazad-dûm a failure, because first of all, the mithril was not Elrond's to take, and second of all, mining that mithril would have endangered the lives of others. So you can already tell by Galadriel's statement that if the tables were reversed and she had been sent to Khazad-dûm, she would not have cared about either of those things. She's also a hypocrite. Like, she has the nerve, the gall, the audacity to tell Elrond to be obedient when like her whole personality is disobedience. I love Elrond's reaction to her when she's like, just be obedient. He's like, you of all people telling me to be obedient. I love the reaction because it's kind of calling her out, even though she refuses to see that. But it also makes me wonder like how they are going to possibly get back on good terms, because in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, they seem pretty friendly. So Gil-galad even has to put her in her place, because she's like, thanks for taking my side. And he's like, I didn't take your side, dude. It's just like you screwed up so bad that now we don't have a choice but to follow through on this. And like, she's supposed to be like this really, really wise elf, but the fact that he has to explain that to her just goes to show how kind of unaware and witless she is. I actually like Adar. I think he's menacing. He's way more scary than Sauron, I think. Like, there was this scene where Sauron is like kind of, I guess, dazed a little bit after a beating, and he looks up and he sees the orcs around him, and I'm like, ugh, you know, orcs. And then in the next instant, it's Adar looking down at him, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, because he's more scary. Like, just the look of him, he's like more menacing. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like in the show, Sauron should be the most menacing person there. But you know, if he's gonna be Anatar, he's taken on a fair form in order to trick the elves. So I kind of see why he's not the most menacing person there. But I think they got a different guy to play him. In fact, he's like doing a really good job of being menacing. We do see Halbrand making a connection or bonding with this warg, I think it is. But this warg looks like a wolf. So I think it's a werewolf, but I'm not sure. And I'm not even sure if wargs and werewolves are the same thing in this world that Tolkien has created. So if it is a werewolf, I think it's a very cool connection to make, because as I was doing research, I found out that in the past, it was Sauron himself who actually created the werewolves. So, and he even turned into a werewolf himself. So we do meet Círdan in this episode, and I like him. I think he's perfectly cast. Not that I know so much about Círdan, but I really like the actor. And I like that they put some thought into his hair. So his hair is not like perfectly symmetrical on both sides. It's like doing something over here and then something over here. But it seems like the well thought out thing. And he actually has a beard. So I think in the Peter Jackson movies, he got like a cameo and he didn't have a beard in that. So if he looks older than the other characters, it's because he's supposed to be very, very old. Like he's from the original batch of elves, and also he's supposed to be very, very wise because he's so old. So being wise is kind of a signature of Círdan. So I do think the show took a misstep in how they played him. That doesn't make any sense, but I'll explain. So at first, when Elrond is telling Círdan whatever benefits that the rings are going to offer is not worth empowering Sauron, Círdan seems to agree with him. However, later on in the same episode, it's Círdan who like shows up with the rings and he's wearing one, and it just makes Elrond seem like he's the wisest person in the room. So something else in the same like storyline is that I was confused with was where Círdan was instructing Elrond to drop the ring. It was described as a scar left from some other thing I don't really remember. But you know, it's like in the sea or something, and then there's like a chasm or something, and then but he describes it as a scar. So the rings have healing powers because of the mithril. And I was like, you know, you're gonna throw a ring with healing powers onto a scar? How is that going to destroy the ring? I don't know. If the rings are healing things, then I was kind of confused by that. Maybe someone in the comments can explain. In any case, Círdan sells out to drop these things into that scar place or whatever. But before he can do so, there's a wave that kind of jolts the boat. And so instead of throwing the rings overboard, he takes it as a sign that he should look at the rings, and he does. And subsequently, he does not end up throwing those rings overboard. So at this point, it kind of makes you think or wonder whose chess move this is to stop him or to stay his hand from throwing those rings over. And it's like this body of water part of the sea, and isn't the sea always right? Who is controlling the sea? Because this isn't just happenstance, like it's not a coincidence. Like this cannot even be misconstrued as a coincidence, like a wave just like hitting the boat so hard. This was like very, very deliberate. So like who is pulling this string? So then Círdan brings in the rings, and he's already wearing the red one, and then he gives Gil-galad the blue one, and then the white one actually falls, and what's her face picks it up? Galadriel. She picks it up and she puts it on. Now this part is kind of confusing because, well, this would make the entire show confusing, because at first there are 16 rings made, and it's Annatar who teaches the elves how to make the rings, and they make 16 rings with Annatar. So then Annatar goes away, and then the elves make 3 rings on their own. Like Annatar or Sauron has no idea about these other rings that the elves made, because the elves made them without him. but they did use the same method. So from that first batch of 16 rings, the 9 were given to men and then 7 were given to the dwarves. So since we're not getting those 16 rings, they're not made, are we getting like the ring wraiths? So the ring wraiths, if you don't know, those were like in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. I keep forgetting the name, sorry. And they were on like the black horses chasing down Frodo and his companions. So like, are we not getting those since the rings, we didn't make the rings? I'm really confused by that. Furthermore, in the books, when the elves made the 3 rings, it's not because they needed the rings to like heal their land, or there was like no urgency. They just made the rings because they wanted them. They actually had no idea that Sauron would be using these rings in his favor. But now in the Rings of Power, they're fully aware that Sauron could possibly benefit from these 3 rings, and they go ahead and make them anyway. So now the show does try to fix this by giving the elves the dilemma. That is to say that they can either make the rings, 1, or they could not make the rings, 2, but lose their land. But they also could have left. The age of elves was always going to end anyways. So if they would have left then, it would have just been earlier. So in this way, the show actually kind of makes the elves look stupid and selfish at the same time, unless I missed something. So if I missed something, just comment below so I could be enlightened. So now I'm gonna go watch the 2nd episode so that hopefully I can have that review up tomorrow. I know there's like people just killing it and they have the review of all 3 episodes up today. Sorry, I can't do that. And then it was storming, so my lights went out at the house. So yeah, I have to watch the 2nd episode now, and then I'll have the review up tomorrow. I know y'all don't have any questions for me. y'all probably know way more than I do about this stuff. You can probably enlighten me. Again, I ask you to do so in the comments. I do have one favor to ask. If you could just please like this video, it will really help out my channel and help it to grow a little bit. I mean, if I had a ring to like grow my channel, I'd probably do that, but not if it meant helping Sauron. It's a little humor for you. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!